I just want you to know that we'll be recording the screen. And so again, welcome to our webinar on carbon trading today. We offer webinars to help educate people about very fascinating technologies and trends that are happening in the marketplace. And we call these the Transforming Leadership webinar series. And I'm Angela Kassler, the CEO of Sustainability Management Association. We just wanted to share our values that we truly believe that we can manage sustainability to enhance our environment, to be able to manage for people and profit, and also being able to be successful in mitigating our environmental impact, and to design for the environment, to really use the ethos of biomimicry to follow what nature does and to be able to design products that nature has already figured out for the millennial. And it all takes a lot of teamwork to bring the market together and to learn practical knowledge how to manage for sustainability. And that's what our organization is about, is as an educator with a purpose to really have the KSAs needed to manage for all three of people, planet, and profit, and to really certify professionals. We offer membership. For students, there's a discount, and then for professionals, it's only $50 a year. And if you're attending today's webinar and you would like to have a continuing education unit, please put your name in the chat, and your privately, you can send me your email address, and I'll email you out a certificate for 1 hour of credit today. And so if you hold a certification from any organization, and of course, if you are certified with us as a sustainability management certified professional, then let me know if you'd like a CMU credit. Our members hail from 38 states across America and 18 countries around the world. And we're very honored to see that so many areas of the world are learning sustainability management and how that brings value to your people, the planet, and of course to your bottom line. And we know that our certified professionals are changing the world and how we do business today, and to really make a difference in how we see the long term and longevity of managing for sustainability. We are the certifying body of 2 certifications. And so the body of knowledge goes through how to manage for sustainability, really build a culture around it, and give people the skills to be able to manage energy, water, solid waste, and also pollution, but also social responsibility and really key human resource management to be able to attract and retain our very top talent. And we do that through a study guide with very practical ways to manage sustainability, to give you the metrics to do your cost benefit analysis and to run your return on investment, and to be able to have the skill set outside of your knowledge base on how to manage the other sides of sustainability that are out of your comfort zone. And if you'd like more information, you can just go to our website, or feel free to email me as well. And our 2 certifications, it's easy to apply. We just need to know if you have 2 years of experience in some fashion managing people, planet, and profit, and then you qualify for the higher tier of certified professional. If you're learning, we certify you as certified associate, and we'd certainly welcome you to peruse the study guide and see if getting certified is something that would help your resume and bring value as a competitive advantage. We know that we are transforming how we lead organizations today, whether it be in the public sector or private sector. And we know that there are many ways that we're able to impact society in a meaningful way. And so that's who we are, what we're about. And thank you so much for joining our webinar today. I'm very excited to introduce you to our board of director, Dan Bradley, with the Sustainability Management Association. And today's webinar is through CarbonKerma, and to be able to help us to understand the trends that are happening in carbon trading, and to also understand a little bit about the whole blockchain side of being able to use your balance sheet for greenhouse gas reduction, mitigation, and your liabilities and assets of your carbon emissions. And so what I'd like you all to do is as you have just comments, feedback, or questions, please go to your toolbar for Zoom and look at the chat and feel free to type in your thoughts as the webinar goes on. And please type in your questions. And we'll have about 15 minutes at the end of the session to talk and discuss and to learn together. So our speakers today are Dan Bradley, he's the Director of Sales, and Michael Tabone, he's the Director of Strategy with CarbonKerma. And we're very honored to welcome you today as our guest speakers. And to our audience, thank you so much for joining us. Dan, I'd like to go ahead and I'll stop sharing now. And if you'd like to share your slide deck, and we'll turn the presentation over to you.
Excellent. Angela, thank you so much. I appreciate that. It was a great intro. Mentioned, I am on the board of directors. Angela did that little 2-3 minute spiel about the SMA. But I'll be very honest, right? 5 years on the board with the SMA. They do so many great things for students, for corporations, on the education side and beyond. So I would encourage you to join the SMA if you haven't. Take a look at it. And Angela said, just kind of look at what they do and what we do as a whole. And I think you'll find it very, very beneficial. So thank you for that. So my screen is slowly popping up. Can you see that, or is it still kind of half and half?
Not yet, almost there.
Okay, so
Dan, do you need me to do it? I can do it. It's not big.
Yeah, you may want you may. I don't know if I for whatever reason have less bandwidth or whatever. So let me introduce Michael Tabone. He is our director of strategy. He is an expert in blockchain, crypto, as well as the carbon credit market. I am honored to have him as one of my peers in going through this, and it's been an absolute exciting time, and I'm sure you're all going to find this very, very exciting presentation also. Yeah, Mike, if you want to share yours, or Angela, if you can give him access, then that would be great.
Michael, are you able to share your screen?
I did share it. I don't know what I'm sharing right now. It says right now you are sharing your screen sharing.
Okay, right now I see your desktop.
Oh, okay, perfect. It's always the wrong
screen. Switch screens. I know. I just love that, right?
100% of the time. So
we love Zoom.
So my favorite part about the blockchain space is that nobody can ever figure out the visual and audio part of this thing. So I apologize if I look back and forth on my screen. So hello, again, thank you guys for the warm welcome, and appreciate the time that the SMA has given us here to speak. As we just said, I'm the director of strategy for CarbonKerma. Dan is the director of sales. I'm glad to have Dan aboard of the project. He's been very instrumental in connecting us with some good contacts. I am a doctor now. I did graduate. So I have a PhD. My PhD is actually in practical uses for blockchain, including decentralized autonomous organizations. It's a whole nother topic within itself. And then I am also the deputy director of research for Cointelegraph, which is the oldest crypto media company. It's been around for over a decade now. And I've also been emerging technology engineer in an aerospace industry for Lockheed Martin. So I kind of wear all the hats in the world, and I also have a family on the side that I occasionally see when I'm not busy, and so that's why I'm here. And so let's go jump right into it. So, who is DigiKerma and CarbonKerma? DigiKerma is the overall company that launched the CarbonKerma token. So the CarbonKerma token is a response to this entire carbon credit market, and we're only talking about a market that. At most, I think most people, it came onto everyone's consciousness maybe around the time that Al Gore had launched, the idea into the world of carbon credits. I think people maybe started really listening then in the world, and over since the last couple of decades, it's basically still in its infancy. And there's no necessarily any standards. Yes, there are registries and there are different type of things, but everybody kind of seems to be doing their own kind of wild west kind of time period out there. And they're so this is going to be normal and natural for any kind of new market. But we're going to have to see, we're going to have to see innovations and things tried and fail. That's what happens with every kind of innovation that's out there. And we had a unique way of kind of tackling some of the problems that exist. So as you may know, there's involuntary and voluntary markets. And so there is a pay to play aspect that exists in the involuntary markets. Some of those happen in the EU, where it's mandatory if you have this much of a carbon footprint that you have to offset it with cap and trade schemes or other kind of schemes that are out there. I don't mean schemes in necessarily a negative way, just the term that everyone likes to use. And the and so there's a dedicated amount, €85 per ton or something like that they have registered. As you know, as you make things involuntary and compulsory, it tends to bring the price up on things, interestingly enough. So there are the voluntary markets, and so the voluntary markets are very big. McKinsey and Company, which I'm sure many of you guys have heard about, consulting agency, said that this market is something like $50 billion when it comes to 2030. So it's a $50 billion industry eventually in the future. Right now, it's again infancy. We're only talking a couple billion or $1 billion. So it will eventually get there. And this is what we're really focused on. We believe that the crypto industry can really be a solution for this entire problem outside of needing to be mandated by a government or a world collection. I think we can be its own solution. And so what happens is we really focus on CCUS, which I think we'll get to in the next slide, but we really focus on CCUS, carbon capture, utilization, sequester, because it's measurable. One of the biggest problems in the voluntary carbon market is the fact that, people are evaluating wind, evaluating planting of trees, evaluating all different types of hydropower, all these different types of CO2 sequester or CO2 removal from the atmosphere as the same. The only problem is that some of these things are not very scientific, and they're being presented as scientific, and that's when the attackers of this whole entire carbon credit thing come on board, and they all use the term greenwashing, which I'm sure some of you guys have heard before. So greenwashing, right? We're just kind of like, okay, it's kind of a guess. And I remember back in the day, I took a class in ecology, and we were measuring stuff for the Smithsonian Institute. So we were out in this forest, and I don't know if you guys have ever done this before, but you go to a tree and you measure up 10 feet and you put a ring around it. You back up a certain amount of feet. You take your thumb and you go, okay, that's 10 feet. And then you go with your thumb, and that's how you measure the tree height. So that's very scientific, right? And then you look around and you go, I guess there's like 10,000 trees here. So that's very scientific. And then, you do some calculations and you go, well, I guess I'll come back, and you come back in 6 months and you go, the same tree, stay in the same spot. You do the same thumb, you go like this, the same, and you go, well, it's 52 feet now. And then and it's all this. And then you say, well, that means that's this much carbon. And it's not very scientific. Of course, that was, I'm old, so that was way back in the day. And then now there's, satellite imagery that takes over canopies of areas that grown trees. The major issue is, even though you might see tree growth or acreage, continuously grow in an area, it doesn't tell you anything about the ecology underneath that tree canopy. So you really don't know exactly what's going on with the ecology. Again, it is simply a guesstimate of what is actually going on with removal of carbon in that area. It's just kind of that greenwashing is really susceptible to that. And, coming from that engineering background that I have, I like data and I like things that are 100% measurable, especially when I'm dealing in aerospace. I'm dealing with people's lives, in a couple thousandths of an inch. Someone, doesn't come back. Helicopters can't stop in the sky. Well, the same thing here. I like to be as measurable as possible. I didn't want to get involved with a company that was kind of guessing as to their as to what actually is happening in their market. So that's how we choose the carbon credits, right? So again, we really believe that greenwashing is a real big issue. And we have two U.S. ex-energy secretaries that are on our board of advisors, and they believe we've kind of taken on the mantle of green proofing, trying to green proof the entire system from this estimation problem that we think it kind of is going to happen. So as this ESG concern continues to grow with corporations, and as the SEC, the Security and Exchange Commission, is saying to companies, hey, we have to put this on your quarterly reports, what your ESG goals are and what you've actually accomplished. That's a section now in your quarterly reports for a public company. As this grows and as more and more companies start doing offsets, I don't think you want to be a company that necessarily spent money on a bad quality offset, because then they're going to say, oh, you spend $1 million at $1 a piece for blank questionable the carbon credit. It's not really worth anything. So now you've just kind of wasted money instead of actually spent it on something that perchance had some value. So we really focus, again, like I said, on the carbon credit utilization and storage component of things. And McKinsey and Company, I think Boston Consulting Group, a couple other the big name consulting agencies, they all have studies where they talk about the scalability also of different methodologies for carbon removal from the atmosphere. And really, CCUS is the top one that has the most amount of scalability at the moment. The problem exists that it's very expensive to create a CCUS facility. We visited one that was down in that's in the United States, cost like 1.7 billion, something like that, to create. Of course it has all the bells and whistles, so it's awesome. You could probably do it for 800 million, but 1.7 billion dollars to make this thing. Then there's 45 in the United States. There's 45Q tax credits, right, which are supposed to help offset some of the cost for the creation of the actual facilities. But the problem is that there's still a gap. There's still a gigantic problem with the actual capital expenditures that go into creating CCUS facilities versus these 45Q tax credits. So the idea behind what we have is CKT, CarbonKerma token, is to kind of not only necessarily destroy that gap, destroy that delta, but perhaps make it profitable to create CCUS facilities. And which means as Angela had mentioned before, yes, we want to do things that are good for the environment. Yes, we want to do things that are good for people, but people are, at the end of the day, going to be incentivized by something. They have to be incentivized by something, and that thing is profit. So if we can try to be as philanthropic as possible, but if there's an actual good or service behind things, it kind of motivates and gets things motivated. So if you can especially if you can go to a bank, or if you can go to a funding source and say, hey, we can pay you guys back in a reasonable amount of time, instead of not being able to pay you back for 20 years, we can pay you back in a year. That makes receiving loans and then building out this technology way faster and easier. And of course, the more this gets built, the more carbon gets out of the air. The more carbon gets out of the air, the closer we get to that Paris Climate Accord agreement that everybody signed, right, to try to get as much carbon out of the air by 2050. I think we're trying to make 50 billion out of the atmosphere by 2050 as globally. But the only way to really do that is not going to be by solar panels. It's not scalable. It's not going to be by hydropower. It's not scalable. The only thing that's really scalable, and again, this is not our research, this is outside companies' researches. The big three kind of really focused on this. CCUS seems to be the only way. Now there is direct air capture, which I'm not against direct air capture at the moment. I believe, and we kind of believe, it's kind of in an inefficient manner of doing things. But part of one of the heads of the Hydra of the entire DigiKerma and CarbonKerma ethos and method is to eventually be able to fund not only help fund CCUS facilities to grow, but also help fund DAC technology to maybe chance get it to the point where it actually becomes more efficient in the future. So if that ever happened, then you would probably see DAC as a additional method for creating CKT tokens. And then, methane, which is born in landfills. The way that they measure methane, of course, is, you have a landfill, you know exactly how much it weighs supposedly, and then it grows, and then you measure it again, and then you supposedly know how much it weighs, and then supposedly so you hear what I'm saying, supposedly, because I don't know if that's actually measurable. I think it's just kind of again, it's that measure with your thumb thing. And if it ever gets to the point where we actually can be scientific about it, I think it's a great method. But I don't know if I would throw that into the same exact category as direct capture and utilization of carbon. One of the best things about CCUS is that it's permanently sequestered in the ground, right? So it's out of the air, instead of where methane, is it really out of the atmosphere? It really kind of entered the atmosphere anyway. So how does each one affect the price? I believe the quality and the measurability and the traceability of these things affect the price of it. So let me just go into that for 1 second. Let me just make sure the next slide doesn't cover this. Okay, good. The next slide does. Perfect. So the reason why we put this onto the blockchain is, and for those people that are not familiar with this kind of technology, a blockchain is simply a decentralized ledger that so that ledger, instead of having an accountant in one spot right down on the books, which is one of the problems that other registries or other schemes have, is that it's a ledger that's somewhere with an Excel spreadsheet. So how many carbon credits exist for this project? And then they go, there's 10,000. And then some guy goes, oh, we just got another 100. Okay. And he just does this. And then that's good enough to cook the books, if you want, on how much carbon is in that, carbon credits are in that particular scheme. With a decentralized ledger, there's multiple books, multiple records that have to all agree. And they all have to agree in a cryptographic hash. They all have to agree across all of these things. So nobody can go in there and just make up numbers or change anything. It's completely immutable, and it gets saved onto the blockchain. So it's very transparent. Anybody can go on there and look up and say, oh, good. DigiKerma didn't just add 10 million, 20 million, 30 million carbon credits out of nowhere. And we actually have what's called a unique carbon tag, a UCT, that actually follows every single CKT token. So you know exactly what carbon got sunk, where it got sunk, and you can follow it through the whole entire process from the beginning to the end of the CarbonKerma token. So what happens is, and this is basically the overall supply chain process, is there would be a CCUS facility that sinks, let's say, 100,000 tons of carbon in a year. Usually they can do more. It all depends on the size of the facility, but we're just going to use 100,000 just for pedagogical reasons. Sink the 100,000 into the ground, and it has to actually go through a metered process. That metered process is measurable, and we can definitely see it. It gets reported. Those kind of things get reported to the EPA in the United States, and outside of here, there's ISO standards that also cover those kind of things. The International Standards Organization that covers that. In the United States, there's a monitor, report, and verify that we actually have to, the MRV process that we have to actually adhere to. The EPA, then you issues basically they issue their own findings and say, yes, we agree that you guys are actually doing this. Here's your 45Q tax credit, if you want to take advantage of that. And that's that kind of third-party verification that does exist. Then that has to go through, our system, and our system unloads that onto the CKTs, then get born. The CKTs get born. It's always 1 ton that's sunk into the ground for 1 CKT, and you can trade up to a kilogram. So it's 0.000001 of a gram that you can trade on the platform. So it is fungible and it is divisible. So you don't have to buy necessarily one whole entire CKT or one entire ton. But that 1 tonnage. So right now on our platform, we were able to secure 1 million tons of sunk carbon. So we actually have 1 million CKT that exist currently. Now, a business is usually going to be the number one buyer of these because they're trying to meet their ESG goals. But you actually have a commodity-based asset, and the CFTC. I always forget this, right? The Commodity Futures Trading Commission. There we go. There's so many acronyms. It's crazy. So the SEC, CFTC. So CFTC actually, has said that carbon credits are a commodity. So it's a commodity. It's not a security. And because it's a commodity, it can be held on a business's balance sheet for however. Because it's on the blockchain, doesn't go bad. It's traceable. There's very easy to secure and very easy to keep. So it's actually staying on your balance sheet. So now you have this commodity on your balance sheet, and if let's say you bought 100,000 of those, somebody sunk 100,000 came onto the exchange, and an airline company decided, hey, we're going to try to offset some of our carbon emissions by buying CKT tokens. They buy 100,000 of these things. It goes on their balance sheet, and they don't have to do anything with them. They can hold on to them. And let's say the price of CKT or price of carbon goes up. If they wanted to take a profit on it, they could. If it goes down and they needed to take a loss on it, they could. If they wanted to meet their ESG goals throughout the year, they could retire them whenever they want. So when you retire them, you burn them. In the cryptocurrency space, we call it burning. But everyone likes to use this word retire. So you retire them through being able to send them to basically a kill wallet, dead wallet, and that produces a certificate saying that you've retired 25, let's say every quarter you retire 25,000 CKT. The first quarter you would get 25,000 certificate that you can prove to your shareholders. You can prove to the public that you've actually removed this from circulation. You also can hold it. You can, and the best part about the blockchain space and blockchain exchanges is that they operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. They never shut down. So if it's December 31st, and for some reason some CFO decides, oh man, we have to make a financial move here, they can do that on December 31st. They can either take the ESG credit, or they can sell it, or they can buy, or whatever they need to do. They can take ownership or remove ownership of it instantaneously, immediately. And it's very, very, so it's not only good for the ESG component of everything, it's also a good financial instrument. And that's part of one of the things that excites me is it allows the carbon credit market to become useful, or another utility for companies, which then, of course, supposed to help incentivize adoption of this type of market. So I know I probably said a lot there. There's probably a lot of questions. I haven't looked at any of the question boards, so I'm afraid, but I've just been talking to the slide, so I apologize. But and I'll try to just give you a couple.
Be afraid, Mike. There's a lot of questions out here, and I'm trying to answer them as we
okay. No problem. No problem. So, all right. So just give me a couple more minutes. So that's basically the gist of it. So now in the future, we hope to be able to provide CKT tokens to consumers as well. So retail consumers would be able to buy it. And the hope is to get someone like an airline company that would say, would you like to pay for half of your ticket utilizing CKT, which they can then use to offset the carbon emissions for the flight, or whatever it happens to be. You jump onto a train, you want to offset your things. Maybe you can, maybe the whole thing can be offset with CKT tokens instead. It all would depend on how the company wanted to operate. You go to your coffee shop, you maybe perchance you pay with CKT to offset that. And maybe they take that as a form of payment. That's maybe in the future. But right now, it's really a business-to-business operation. And I think this gives businesses the opportunity to have a lot of flexibility with their balance sheet and a lot of flexibility with the actual commodity itself. And being on the blockchain just makes sure that it's traceable, so they know it's not double counting. There's not rehypothecation going on with the asset, where we're selling the same token a million times. It doesn't happen because it's one for one. So all of that kind of stuff is really kind of all those risk things are mitigated with the blockchain. So yeah, I just mentioned all these, right? So you can meet your ESG goals with the carbon credit with CKT. You can just retire it. It's very good PR for your company. And also, the CFO can use it on the balance sheet. So I just talked about all these. So I know that this is maybe one of the questions that exists is, $65 per CKT. How is that derived at? And that's basically derived because the process to get to having a quality token. So, I'm an Austrian economist, so I really kind of believe that everything happens from the supply side of things. But in this case, there's so few CCUS facilities, right? I think there's 24, 26 in the whole world. There's 15 in the United States that are active, and there are more that are being growing in the United States that are in the planning stages. So it's still in an infancy environment, basically, as far as I'm concerned, and it's probably going to need some kind of stimulation to be able to grow, to have the incentive to be able to, again, to meet that gap between the capex and how much it costs to create these facilities. Once that delta is there, and there's an actual avenue for people to take their sunk carbon and have an avenue to actually monetize it, that should incentivize the entire industry it's kind of like a vicious cycle, right? It gets everything going and it kind of feeds itself. So again, this says that we minted, and we did mint 1.2 million CKT, which represents the existing carbon credits that we have on the exchange. And just a quick note on the exchange itself, we never take custody of anybody's whatever they're using for payment or their CKT. So we never keep custody of it. Everything is self-custodied by the individual or the company, which is very important, because we've had, there's, in the cryptocurrency industry, we have had issues of trust and issues of people running off to the Bahamas and having fun and all that kind of stuff, and we're trying to get away from that. So self-custody is very important for us, and we believe that that's really the in line with the ethos of cryptocurrency to begin with. So that's basically good. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Right there, and then that's a slide. But yeah, I'm opening it to questions. And
Angela, do you want me?
Afraid.
Sorry, Michael. Do you want me to go through kind of the questions, or Angela, or do you want to do that?
Dan, I know that you've been monitoring the chat, and thank you so much for doing that. I'm happy to have you guys just start a discussion, because if I could be honest, I'll be honest to the whole audience. When I first learned carbon trading, it was when the Chicago Exchange was live through Al Gore. And then when it closed down, I hadn't really given it much thought. And then as we saw it pick back up, the driver seems to be that it is the net zero goals from many of our multinationals or large corporations that would, need to find a way to mitigate their carbon emissions in their operations to be able to show they're moving towards net zero emissions. So would that be correct in that assumption, that that's really driving the carbon trading market, is that giving corporations the opportunity to be able to buy, trade, and sell their carbon emissions to somebody else that has sequestered it? Would that be the driver of the market exploding like it is for carbon trading?
1,000%, right? So the only problem is that we're trying to expand who's actually interested in being part of that conversation, right? So there's only a certain amount of people that's going to target, and that are going to that's going to include. This kind of says to people that maybe not, so there's a great example, personal hero of mine. People, I like the guy, but Peter Thiel is big in the tech space and everything else, right? He's a big Bitcoin guy. I'm a big Bitcoin guy, and he's not an ESG guy. But if you were to say, listen, I know you're not an ESG guy, but if you want to meet your company's goals and stuff, here's an avenue to do that, and here's something that's more traceable, I think that's kind of going to bring that kind of person into the conversation. And then the more people we bring into the conversation, the better. Again, I hate to use the word vicious cycle, but it's like that, right? The more you get in, the more people want to come in, the more they want to, it's BlackRock's, bringing up the ESG thing that starts the whole conversation, right? So the more that happens, I think the more you'll see adoption happen. And incentives work, behavioral economics, nudging, they call it. This has, been a very important, area of study for years. And, that's the only way to really do it, I think, is to nudge people into that direction.
Michael, okay. I think a lot of this CCUS, just the acronym, just the term, may be new to people. A lot of the questions and kind of comments were, how do you really capture and store through that $1.7 billion CCUS facility, right? What's the technical way that they sequester that, right? And Sure
Okay.
that.
Yeah. So this is a massive question.
I know it is. Yeah, I know.
All right. So there's a lot of science behind this, but I'm going to try to break this down really simply. So what they do is they take there's these gigantic vats that get filled with um, a mixture of different gases and materials, and it gets heated up and cooled down in different stages of this process, and that separates different gases to it separates the CO2 from different gases. So now you have all this leftover waste and all this other stuff that gets, and it's not waste as in bad waste, but the CO2 gets removed and separated, and then that CO2 can go into a whole bunch of different things, including enhanced oil recovery. So they actually use it. They pump it through pipes, and they can chuck that into oil wells that were only producing like maybe let's say 2,000 gallons per day, and they can get that oil well up to producing 8,000, 10,000 gallons per day. So it actually could help enhance oil recovery. They also use it in production of things like concrete. They also use it in just regular ecological geographical storage. They just chuck it in the ground and it just stays there. So it all depends on and when they chuck it in the ground and just stays there, it has its own attribute according to the EPA. So everything is a little different, but you can utilize it in actual products, like concrete is a good example, or you can utilize it in advanced oil recovery, or you can use it in just permanent sequester into the ground. But it goes through this heating up and cooling down process. That's like the and I think we can actually, if Dan wants, I can send you guys, a pretty good overview of how it gets done, a little more scientific than what I'm about to do now, because this would be like a 2-day event, just to get the basic science done.
What I was going to say, Michael, is since you're sharing on our website, and everybody can go to the website, right? There's a little 3-minute video, encapsulated video that shows the process in a very layman's terms, very high level layman's terms, but that might help explain, because I'm a very visual guy, right? Help line explain how the process works.
Would you like me to show that to our audience? Because I
Yes,
think there's a
yes,
lot of curiosity out there.
Perfect. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yes.
While I do that, we have a hand raised from Brandon Hoffman. Hi, Brandon. What is your question?
Hi. Sorry if I'm talking a little low. I'm in the library right now, but I'm pretty familiar with direct air capture as well as blockchain. So
cool.
My question is more just the sequestered carbon, like your token, what is that representing? Just 1 ton of carbon that's been sequestered, a ton of carbon sequestered per year. And I guess to follow up on that, if you mint a token based on a ton of carbon sequestered, can that then be retraded afterwards? Yes. Okay.
Yes. So yeah, it's 1 carbon credit. So if let's say 2022, a company sequestered 1 ton of carbon, and then it went through the whole process of being verified, and then we issued 1 CKT for that carbon. It could get traded a million times, but it's always 1 ton, 1 for 1, right? It doesn't get updated every year or any of that kind of stuff. It's 1 forever. So if that stayed in your wallet for 10 years, it would just still be 1 carbon credit that was sequestered back in 2022.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I was just curious because, I mean, especially coming from an environmental standpoint, like I get the business behind it. It's like, I feel like it's the question of, okay, we sequestered in 2022. It's on your balance sheet in, let's say, 2030. Mm-hmm. Is that really offsetting the carbon? That was just more the question I had. Like, I get the idea behind it's good. That's just one of the ethical things, I guess, maybe.
Right. Well, it's offset because it's permanently sequestered. So when we're not taking carbon that, a good example is that methane thing, right? So, you make a landfill, you make the methane. There's gases that escape through the porousness of the ground. So there is gases that are escaping. When it's permanently sequestered in the way we're talking about a geographical rock formation in the ground, it's not escaping. So it's completely removed from the atmosphere. So even if it's 10 years from now, it's sequestered.
Yeah, it's permanently sequestered. But my question, right, is like, so let's take an airline, like you were saying, right? Mm-hmm. So they make a ton, in 2022, they offset it with a token on their balance sheet, right? Then the next year, they produce another ton, but they're offsetting it by the same token for that ton that's already sequestered, or it's new sequestered.
Yeah, if they own 1 ton of CKT, they have to burn that to be able to get to recognize the fact that they've retired that ton.
Okay, so you can retire it.
Yep, you have to be able to burn it, right? So if you said you're familiar with blockchain, right? So there's a million times that people have burned things, right? Shiba Inu got burned by Vitalik Buterin famously, right? When they sent him $1 billion worth, which I still can't wrap my head around, $1 billion worth of Shiba Inu, and he burnt half of it and then sent the rest of it to a COVID-19 India relief fund, right? So, but yeah, he burned half of that. So same exact function, but through our exchange, it actually produces a certificate that also has the transaction ID and everything else. So everything is traceable. And just so I don't know if I mentioned this during the presentation, but we utilize the Polygon network on Ethereum. So Polygons are layer 2. And this might be a little bit over everyone's head, so I apologize. But if it was blockchain, it would be another 2-day seminar.
No,
so
that's exactly what we want to know.
Okay, so it's on Polygon. Polygon has a net zero goal and initiative, so it kind of aligned up with what we're dealing with. And then Polygon, of course, is layer 2 to Ethereum, which is the second largest cryptocurrency in existence right now. And it is that's the layer 1. So that's what we use as a security layer is Ethereum.
Okay, cool.
Nice.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that was very interesting.
Thank you, Brandon.
Awesome.
That's a
Thanks,
really
Brandon.
great discussion. I was literally just thinking about my friend's house, literally just blew up in Pennsylvania, and the 2 houses next door on each side of her. And I was wondering, she particularly lives over an old coal mine in Pennsylvania, And so I was thinking, I was like, these carbon capture, if we're storing under the ground, eventually those gases will move, right? And so I just wonder, is anyone, I'm sure that maybe the EPA is the best person to ask this question to, but it's just, what does that safety look like as well? And I like the idea of another company coming in and utilizing those gases to reuse them for production so that you can offset maybe natural gas and not have to frack. And so, those are really interesting new developments that are happening. And so I thank you for really explaining the carbon capture. If I could take 3 seconds, I'll show this 3-minute video. Give me 1 second to actually share the sound. I forgot to click a little button. Here we go. And so maybe this will help. I know myself, I'm very interested to learn more details about the carbon capture. So let's play this video for us.
Their captured emissions to CarbonKerma, a digital currency created by removing measurable CO2 emissions at source. CarbonKerma is a marketplace for stationary CO2 emitters where they can monetize their captured emissions to offset the cost of adding carbon capture, utilization, and storage technology, CCUS, to their operations. Here's how it works. CCUS technology is deployed at hard-to-abate stationary emission sources like power plants, as well as fertilizer, chemical, cement, and steelmaking facilities. Then the captured CO2 is injected deep into underground geological formations where gases have naturally been for millions of years. This process is highly regulated and constantly monitored. Regulations require sophisticated measuring meters be installed at injection sites, measuring and validating each ton of CO2 that is captured. CarbonKerma tokens, CKT, can only be minted by approved capturing entities that have valid permits. Once a capturer or sinker mints a token, CarbonKerma attaches its own proprietary unique carbon tag, UCT, a digital signature of that token. This tag provides important information, including the date the CO2 ton was injected and where it is stored. Verification and measurement cannot be more transparent. No new tokens will be minted after 50 billion tons of CO2 have been captured, and the tokens will remain on the Kerma exchange until all have been safely burned and destroyed. This end goal aligns with the Paris Climate Accord benchmarks and targets. On Kerma Exchange, large emitters and offset buyers can spread the cost of purchasing tokens across their entire value chain. And by breaking down huge industrial CO2 reductions into small token-sized pieces, consumers can now buy and use CKT to help offset their own carbon footprint. Similarly, airlines can now offset their emissions with confidence that they're removing 1 ton of CO2 from the atmosphere for each CarbonKerma token they buy and retire. This eliminates complex calculations of offset from other schemes like planting trees. Passengers on airlines can participate and know confidently that each token they purchase is going towards removing 1 ton of CO2 that would otherwise have been released into our shared air. Merchants can adopt CarbonKerma as an acceptable form of payment so that their customers can buy a cup of coffee or share a ride using a digital currency that helps remove carbon emissions at the point of purchase. Imagine your money clearing the atmosphere. CarbonKerma is the monetary and offset network that aims to decarbonize industries around the world. Your money, making the world a better place. Doesn't that make you breathe easier?
Awesome. So that helped a lot to help me visualize the carbon capture. Thank you so much. Let me go ahead and stop share, and we'll just go ahead and talk. And Dan, there were some questions in the chat about does anyone have any further questions about the capture part of that after we just saw a video of how it works, how it's stored in the ground? I'm really glad that you do that, more so than saying, okay, we've got a tract of forest and has this many trees, this many species, and they're this old, and having that third party verified. So
I think maybe Jackson had a he unmuted for a second.
Sorry, am I muted?
No, I think Jackson may have had a question. He unmuted for a moment, but maybe I'm wrong.
Okay, Jax, if you have a question, feel free to just shout it out. Or you're welcome to type it into the chat.
Yeah, it's that traceability that really is the big thing, because again, as companies start doing this, I think that they're going to be open to potential poking and saying, how do I actually know that this is really a carbon credit that we've sequestered? And that's one of the problems with I was talking to some people previously about DAC, and as long as DAC can go through a measurable metered process, I'm totally cool with it. But imagine giving somebody the ability just to suck carbon out and then it just goes out the back window. It would be an endless supply of carbon. You would have it would be crazy. So it needs to go through that measured process. And I think but I think we're going to get there. I think DAC definitely has the potential to get there. So I'm not against DAC. I hope I don't come off that way.
No, not at all. I do believe that it's super important part of the market, and it's how nature balances all of the emissions, whether they're from natural systems or from man-made sources. And so that was a great answer. Thank you. I do
add this though, Angela, is those who are new to this, your head's probably swimming. I know mine was when I first started. Oh my gosh, more acronyms, more stuff, more things to go. Now we're adding blockchain to that. Really? Okay, well now, right, it all makes sense though. Right? It all makes sense, right? The value that you want your tokens to be at, you want it to be at the highest possible level. And that's what we're doing, right? Through the MRV process, all of what we're doing through the blockchain, by definition, or traceable, back to the milligram, all of that stuff, right? If you have more stuff tomorrow, when you sleep on this, you think about it, right? Email me, email Angela, whatever, right? My information's on there. We can have a separate call, another follow-up, webinar to this. It is kind of new, I get it, but there's a lot of really cool things going on, and would love to, continue this on. Tony, question.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to let you guys know, say thank you, and just let you guys know like how interesting and like I was into the presentation was really good. I'm just like, wow, like mind blow, and I caught, I may not have put all the pieces together, but like I caught, I was catching some of those, pieces, and it's just really interesting. And yeah, so
Well,
thanks.
thank you.
Thank you
Yeah,
very
it's
much.
a lot of work. I know it sounds easy, like just there's a lot of work that went into all of this, and dealing with the lawyers by themselves was a crazy thing. But of course, no lawyer ever answers you in less than 15 minutes, so they can charge by the quarter hour. But there, but yeah, and there's a lot of interesting things with just the law of everything. How does it all work? And so that's going to be also an evolving thing as well, right? So,
You know,
I will add this, all right? So your places of work, your friends, your uncle, right? If anybody is involved in a large corporation that's looking to offset or whatnot, please reach out to me, right? That's obviously key. We'll be happy to work with you and them to get to where we all need to be.
yes,
So,
and Dan, it's very important that people know that these are options that are available to them, especially because it is classified as a commodity, that it doesn't have to go on the separate. I know you called it the decentralized
yeah,
balance sheet. So this is helpful to people to be able to monetize their investment into carbon offsets or carbon capture. May I address a very important question I see in the chat from Colin Lever? And, I think this is a wonderful long-term thought that as we go back maybe to a national or even worldwide registry, his question is, so as you have stated, CCUS is a very expensive option and DAC is considered inefficient. When do you believe we will find a solution that is affordable and efficient? And do you have your hopes and dreams set on will there be some kind of centralization where data is available to the public and then they can select an exchange? Or what are your thoughts on that?
it's a great question. So the problem is with CCUS is not necessarily that the process or the creation of it is expensive. It's expensive now because there isn't an industry creating a bunch of CCUS equipment. So just like for aerospace as an example, I work on helicopters. The reason why helicopters are $25 million is because there isn't a helicopter plant in every single state or across the entire world, right? There's only 5 manufacturers of helicopters. That's why helicopters are expensive. CCUS is the same way. It's expensive for the equipment itself because its only purpose, a lot of this, is for CCUS facilities. So I believe once you start incentivizing that wheel and you start bringing things out, okay, great. I need to be able to create, right now, if a company is creating the equipment for one CCUS facility, it's easy to scale and create 5 of them or 10 of them at a time. It's harder to scale one and you have to wait 10 years because it's not just that, it's breaking ground. You have to, you have to get the permits, all this other kind of stuff. And so there's a lead time as well. But I believe that it's a scalability issue of economy of scale for companies that are creating the equipment. So I think that is part of that's part of the efficiency issue.
Right.
Again, incentivizing the creation of CCUS facilities, then, also send signals to the market saying, okay, we have to create the production of the equipment, which then says, oh, the equipment went down in price. Okay, great. That means that there's more availability to create another one, which then creates more economies of scale, and it's just never ends.
Sure.
And so if there was a CCUS facility, you have multiple CCUS facilities across the United States and across the world. If it doubled or tripled, then you would also see that much amount of carbon get removed from the atmosphere, which of course benefits everybody. One of the, and I'm sorry if I didn't see this in one of the questions. I don't know if anybody asked this question, but I'm going to raise this question. So one of the questions that gets, I've heard in the past is, well, we're trying to remove our dependency on oil completely. And why would we do CCUS if it kind of helps the oil thing? It kind of helps keep us on the oil standard. The only problem is that if we all think about it, if we stop using oil right now today, we couldn't have this conversation on this computer. There's a whole bunch of things that would just die, just dead stop, right? So we're going to have a little bit of an oil dependency, and we might as well remove as much carbon as possible while we get to that zero oil world. Okay. So this, if you believe in that we need to completely stop using fossil fuels, those are all arguments everybody can have, but you at least want to buy yourself some time to be able to get there, as far as I'm concerned. So, I think CCUS and what we're doing here with carbon credits with CKT, I think just buys the whole world time to get to that stage, because we're not there 100% yet, right? Not everybody can afford EV vehicles, and we're not there yet. And the United States is, a little bit different than other places. In other places that are a little closer together, maybe it makes sense to have a EV vehicle where you can just replace the battery real quick. But if you live out in the middle of Ohio and your neighbor is 5 miles away, it's a little harder to have to live on that little scooter for the battery. I see somebody raised another question here in the chat. Do you know if investors in the CCUS can receive renewable energy credit RECs to assist with scalability? So the renewable energy credits, do you mean like 45Qs, Angela?
Those are the specifically for investors to invest into a new infrastructure project, such as, say, a wind farm, solar. This would make sense that CCUSs were included in REC markets, so that as investors donate money to or invest in a new build, that they would receive some kind of REC for it. And I would love to see that on your website. I think that would be a great value for the push and pull, because those investors may also want to purchase tokens that come from those CCUS. And so I think that would bring some value add. But yeah, I don't know if that's being discussed, that these are classified as infrastructure builds for renewable energy. So say that those gases were then used for producing, say, some kind of natural gas that could be used, then, that would then qualify for renewable energy source. So those are just some thoughts I have to put the pieces of this market together into working together, if that makes sense, between finance and all of the new builds that are going on to be able to mitigate carbon. So just a thought.
Yeah, absolutely. Great thought. I love it. It's fantastic. And that the more that happens, I think the better, the more that those puzzle pieces get put on the board, I think the better it is for everybody. So yeah, that's great. Thank you. I'll have to look, I'll have to investigate that part of the process a little bit more. I've been so concentrated on this part. I haven't been concentrated on that other part, but
yes. And I know that this is very complex. And so honestly, it's a lot of education. I'm sure that's what you do all day long. And so we welcome you back. We welcome, if we could put out some informational, educational material. I think that the world is confused about CCUS right now. I can tell you they are confused. Okay. And so, anyway, that's what we're about, is education. So if we can help with that, please let us know. And we'd be happy to host you again, as maybe you could kind of round people up and say, let's do a case study webinar where, they can show, here's how we're working together to it's literally make a new system. And so,
absolutely. Well, it's funny you mentioned that. So because there is a company that I work with, I don't work for them. We don't make any money, but I've worked with them on research before. It's a company called Current. And what Current does is they provide a platform where people can participate in a conversation based on studies. So you can actually bring industry professionals in on the conversation. So if you'd like to get some of the members of the organization to participate in that, we can set that up. Where we're setting up people like, Chuck McConnell, who's one on our advisory board, U.S., ex-U.S. Secretary of Energy, I think during the Obama era. Those kind of things, we can get those kind of professionals in, and people that are professionals within this organization can probably also participate. And then you can actually see conversations where people are bringing in statistics and blah, 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 blah. And, I think that'd be a really interesting thing to do. So we can work. I'm more than happy to work together with you on that. And, obviously with Dan working together so we can facilitate that. And,
add to that, we're also hopefully, thank you for inviting us back. We should have a case study, hopefully, done by then that will, go into more details of certain things. But all of that on the education process is key, and we fully believe in that as well. So as we get things, Angela, I'll send them to you, or we'll send them out to the group, and yeah, we would love to come back and update.
Well, thank you both very much. And for our audience, I don't know if you can get to your reactions or just feel free to unmute and say anything you like. Thank you very much for this presentation. I learned a lot. Thank you.
Well, thank you guys for having us. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your questions too.